Out to everybody here who's made the trip here to Melbourne today. Welcome to Melbourne. Welcome to Victoria for those who have come from out of state. Gathered here today at the offices of the Victorian Farmers Federation. One of the biggest problems that we have going around with regard to everything that's happening worldwide is our food supply, our food security. For many, many years, myself and my family have been fighting agricultural political issues to try and save farmers. I'm a third generation, was dairy farmer. Now I'm not dairy farmer, we're doing something different. But I'm a third generation farmer, and we have seen over the last 40 odd years a massive decline in Australian family farming enterprises. We have fought quite a number of battles over the years, and we are getting smashed to pieces. And one of the big issues that we have to deal with is organisations that supposedly represent our agricultural enterprises, our farmers. And one of the organisations that we have a big problem with, in my opinion, is the Victorian Farmers Federation. But just a little bit of history as to how we got to this point, or how I became involved in what I'm doing here. 1985, my parents were involved in setting up an organisation to try and fight all the bank foreclosures and all the things that they did to farmers to send them broke and get him off the land so that land could be taken over by multinational corporates. This was the first time that we saw this kind of thing starting to happen. And it's just got a million times worse from there. Some of the big ticket items that I've been involved here in Victoria and nationwide are the North-South pipeline in Victoria here, which was a scheme where the government intended to take enormous amounts of our farmers' water that we use for crucial food production and send it down to Melbourne. They thought that during the drought, they can take our water and bring it down to Sugarloaf Dam for Melbourne's water supply. The fact of the matter is, there was an enormous number of other options for Melbourne's water supply, but they were absolutely intent on taking our water. So we fought against that. We fought very, very hard. And one of the things that led up to the 2010 election with regard to the North-South pipeline was our coalition government was telling us that if they got into power in Victoria and they knocked out the Labor government, they would have a royal commission into all the dishonesty and the illegal activity and the corruption that led to the whole thing with the North-South pipeline. That these people are not fighting for us. They lied to you. These are the corporate politicians. They tell you they fight for the Australian people, but they don't. We then moved on to the Murray-Darling Basin Plan. And the Murray-Darling Basin Plan is like the North-South pipeline on steroids. That was designed to strip enormous amounts of irrigation water off our family farmers and out of agricultural production. And we got no support at all from the VFF. And we need to look at one of the reasons that this is happening is because our corporate governments have signed up to organisations such as the World Economic Forum, such as the Agenda 21. And the entire purpose of that is to destroy our country and our people. And one of the major tactics that they have is to wipe out food production. They need to starve people to death and into submission. And this is the very reason why they are attacking our farmers. Organisations like the VFF, the National Farmers Federation, they are running cover fire for the enemies of our country. They are absolutely trying to shut down any opposition to the World Economic Forum. And a big part of our problem is that people who now are in politics started with groups like these small groups, the VFF, or even your trade unions, the whole lot. They got into power from places like this, and now they have their snouts in the trough. That is what they are doing, that's what they're about. They will sell you and us out because they like their big fat paychecks, they like their junkets, they like all their perks, they like rubbing shoulders with all the people who think that there's something special. So they are prepared to sell us out for those very reasons. When we were having all the problems with the Murray-Darling Basin plan, and I'll tell you right now, that plan is based on absolute fraud. The entire thing was based on so-called environmental science. And the environmental science is complete fraud, as is the whole concept of climate change. That is what the whole problem is. And the Victorian Farmers Federation is whole bent on supporting this climate change fraud. And the biggest losers, and what climate change was designed to do, is to attack farming. There is no way known that farming can exist if they implement all the policies that they talk about with regard to climate change. And this is one of the reasons why we need organisations like the VFF to say, hell no, this is fraud, it is killing our members. And they are selling us out. When we were dealing with the Murray-Darling Basin plan, I tried to get these organisations to fight alongside us. They actually tried to bury us. So we thought the propaganda from the VFF and others like them is join up to the VFF or National Farmers, whatever. We will advocate for you. We are here to fight for farmers. You pay your subs and we will go back to you. We will create policies from the grassroots up. Be a member, get into the positions, take your place, get your resolutions up, get them passed, take them to the conference, see if they get adopted, and then they become VFF policy. So we did all that. We battled our guts out to do that. And what we saw was they deliberately just ignored the whole thing. We did the hard work. We were the grassroots members. We brought the policies from the ground up, from the people up. That's what they tell you it's all about. So what went wrong? What's gone wrong is we are dealing with a top-down regime. These people, as well as the vast majority of the political matrix, have no intentions of working for the people. They are working for the big corporations. They're working for the World Economic Forum, United Nations, WHO. That's who they're working for. And we need to do whatever we can to put the spotlight on that and make these people understand they are being sold out. Right now across the entire country, we are seeing farmers who are facing all kinds of different things that are being done to them, and they think these things are happening in isolation, but they're absolutely not. They are being done as part of an overall global plan, nationwide, globally wide, that takes out our agriculture. And this is the message that we need to start to get people to understand. And this is what we've been pushing for the last 12 months. And this is starting to work. We are getting more and more farmers to understand that they're being lied to. We've got issues going on right now in Western Victoria with the transmission lines and the towers that they want to put through prime agricultural land. This is all part of a global scam. This ties in with the renewable energy, the climate change garbage, and what that does is that displaces enormous tracts of agricultural land, devalues people's properties, and shuts down food production. Depending on which reports that you read and look at, what they are saying is that within the next small while, the infrastructure to support this supposed renewable energy will take up 50 to 75% of the prime agricultural land. So therefore, you won't be growing food on these places. So when we hear the WEF and all the rest of it, the United Nations, say you're going to have food shortages, they are correct. And they know that we're going to have food shortages because they are the ones who are creating it. And these are the messages that we need to get out from all our politicians, all our representative lobby groups, all our community, and every other group that's going around. These are the messages that we need to get out. They are so desperately trying to shut that down. So that tells you that is our power. We are the people. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in political parties or the current system, or you think that other systems should be in place. We all need to come together and push this issue. We need to push on whatever avenue we have. And we're now starting to see some of the smaller political parties and a few of the politicians who are now starting to say, hang on, this World Economic Forum stuff is real. This stuff actually has teeth. And now we're starting to break through. If we get politicians, we get people in the media who start to say this stuff, then the public is going to open their eyes. And the public is what we need. We've got 25 million soldiers in Australia right now. We just need to educate them and mobilise them. People power is the answer. That is how we win this. But we must break through and get the information to them. So I tried to do that with the Victorian Farmers Federation. I did everything they said. I became a branch president, and then I stood for the VFF state president's job in 2016. And I stood for that position on a platform of they are totally corrupt. They are selling out our farmers, they're selling out our state, and they're selling out our food production and the safety of your families. And I'll show people here, they've got a picture here of a young bloke, the voice of Victorian Agriculture, Victorian Farmers Federation, vff.org.au. Well, I put it to you that the actions that the VFF are taking are going to guarantee that kids like that will never ever get a go. Why would the VFF, which is a member-based organisation, why would they want to pit these young fellas here, young people who want to get into agriculture, why would they pit them up against multinational billion-dollar companies? I put it to you that the reason is because they are in the business of selling us out. They are influenced one way or another by the big money people and by the politicians and the corporates. That is why they do not fight for us. That is why they rubber stamp almost every policy that attacks our farmers. So therefore, people who are watching this, people who are here today, we need to start putting enormous pressure on the VFF and call them out. Right now, there's a big problem brewing where there's people who are calling for the VFF board to be spilled and replaced because we know they are not doing the job. They're just polishing seats. They've got their snout in the trough, and I just wonder if all they're doing is selling us out so they get overly paid massive big promotions and jobs in government or jobs working for these corporates. the rot is everywhere. We're seeing in Western Australia right now the shocking things that are happening with the Cultural Heritage Act over there in agriculture. It has been a disaster. It's only just got going, and now they're talking about shutting it down. This policy would have a catastrophic effect on agriculture. Your local land care group, they wanted to put some trees along the river. And as we know, the land care group, that's what they do. You know, they're environmentalists to the nth degree. But from what I've heard, one of the newly formed Aboriginal co-ops or corporations went to them and said, under these new heritage laws, you have to pay us $2.5 million to be able to get a permit to plant these trees. Now imagine that across the board in ag, in any kind of development, in any kind of anything. So that's where they're going with this. And I say to people, the voice is a million times worse. For people who might think that the voice is about supporting Aboriginal people and giving them a run in the Constitution and making their lives better, it is not. It is actually about making their lives a million times worse. The voice will cost lives. The voice is the weapon that the United Nations and WEF want to use to take total control of everything we do here, and one of the biggest ticket items is food production. Their objective is to shut down food production, and the voice would be a perfect vehicle to do that. That would bring in the Agenda 21 ideas, and that would give them the power to totally control it. For those people who own land, whether you're on agriculture, whether you're on a small farm or just whatever, these people would take control of your assets. They would tell you what you can't do, and everything would be what you can't do. It would send you broke. Our food production would crash through the floor. Now this is David Joe Hinkey's high impact, really rally the troops and fight against this stuff. This is what he said. Read the cultural heritage stuff. These rules are the sort of thing made by bureaucrats and environmentalists who have never spent time on the land. What the hell does that mean? Is that a call to arms? Is that something to say to people, this is an absolute categorical threat to everything that you have and own and you care for and you've ever worked for? This is a threat to our national security, to our ability to feed our people. We talk about, you know, the National Party supporting the farmers. No, they don't. The National Party, the Greens, the Libs, the Labor, I don't care who you vote for. They're all part of the one enemy of our people. They all work for international terrorist organisations. Yes. So we are in an enormous amount of trouble. But there are a huge number of people are saying, we the people have the power, and we do. Right here today, we have a situation where we've got some politicians who are making very serious decisions that are drastically affecting our lives. And we need to get stuck into them. And what we need to do is, not physically, but we need to attack the politicians who are selling us out. And if we've got any that are starting to say the right thing and do what we're saying and what we're doing, then we need to give them support. So we've got a very small handful right now who are starting to do the right thing, say what we're saying, and actually expose what's happening with the WEF and the UN. And they're starting to tell the truth. And people are listening. People are hearing. And the vast majority of the political parties are terrified. They are absolutely terrified. They can't afford to have one politician spill the beans, let alone a growing number. And what we're seeing is some of these politicians are now starting to actually represent we the people. They're starting to see the catastrophic danger that is happening. We have every kind of political entity represented in Australia today, and it's growing. The people are starting to realise their power. They are forming up into groups, they're forming up into organisations, and they are taking the system on. And that must happen. If we are to fight for our future generations, for our kids' future, we need to do that. Because at the end of the day, we are the people and we can do this. And one thing we need to do is, if we've got people in Parliament who are starting to support us, get behind them. I don't care what colour they are, I don't care what party they're from. If they turn on the system and they start to fight for us, then I say, equally amongst everybody else, get behind them. Give them the support. I know myself, when I was in the VFF here, I would go and I'd talk all over the place. Media, organisations, whatever, and I'd say, I'm Wade Northausen, I'm President of West Goulburn VFF UDV branch. And then I would say what I said. I stuck my neck out a lot. And I know others who tried to do the same thing, but they wouldn't do that because they didn't get any support. People are not going to stick their neck out and have a crack if they don't get support. And I know how a lot of people feel about our politicians. But if we can get some who are going to stick their neck out and buck the system and take on the corporates, take on the terrorists, then I, for one, will give them a platform. So I'll just invite Craig Kelly to say a few things on what Ralph Babette's doing, because Ralph Babette is saying some incredibly powerful things. He is fighting for us.
Thanks, Wade. I think that the last couple of years, there's a politician that has bucked the system. Mate, I think you at least tick that box for me. The greatest enemy of Australian farmers today is this policy of net zero. And being an enemy of the farmers, it is also an enemy of the Australian people. Under this policy of net zero, they estimate, or the calculations that our globalist friends like to do, is that 15% of Australia's so-called emissions comes from the agricultural sector. And that has to go back to net zero. But that 15% is not the fuel that goes in the farmers' tractors or the solar panels on the shed. That 15% comes from the farts and the burps of animals. I know we laugh, and we should laugh, but that is how they calculate it. From our dairy cattle, from our beef cattle, and from our sheep. And they, our globalist friends, want to wind that back to net zero. So that simply means, as we've seen in other countries, as we've seen recently in Ireland, and we've seen in the Netherlands, and will progress, it's just a matter of time until it comes here, that involves culling of our herds, the reduction of our flocks, and it also affects those that grow vegetables, fruit and vegetables, because of the fertilisers that it attacks them as well. This is a war we have to fight. But sadly, and I saw that for myself being a Member of Parliament, not only the Labor Party, but the Liberals and the Nationals actually gave up and surrendered to the globalist deal of net zero by 2050. It was a shameful period to sit in that federal parliament and to see national members of parliament that are meant to represent our regional areas of this country and represent the farmers simply sell out and say, yes, I'm going along with this net zero, knowing that it will mean simply the slow decimation of the Australian agricultural sector and our regional towns. At a time we need to be strengthening our regional communities, taking the pressure off housing prices in cities, we are doing the exact opposite. And every single policy that comes under net zero Every single policy surrenders a competitive advantage our nation has and hands it to the communist Chinese. So for some people that think this fight is too hard, I say no. I say we can win this. And there's a few recent examples. Look at the debate on The Voice. It was only a few months ago that in the polls were showing The Voice had 60%, 65% plus support. But the public got out there and discussed it. We had a bit of free and fair and open debate. And that support has collapsed because people understand it. We can do the same on this net zero. If we can explain to the Australian people what it will do to our agriculture sector, I believe the Australian people will get in and they will support the farming communities. So it's got to be word of mouth. It is an information war that we are in. Every one of you has got to become a voice, to use your social media, talk to your network of family and friends and acquaintances. And the simple thing should be for our farmers' federations: exempt agriculture from net zero. There are many other sectors that we should exempt, and I believe we should throw net zero out the window. But at the very minimum, if we have these Victorian Farmers Federations, if they are going to stand up for farmers, they should be standing up and saying, we want agriculture exempt from anything to do with net zero.
Absolutely.
That should be the very minimum. And if they are not prepared to do that, if the National Party are not prepared to do that, we'll chuck them all out and start again. Thank you.
In Western Australia, they've just announced that they're going to either suspend or get rid of the Cultural Heritage Act over there because of people power. We are seeing that we can do it. So we need to take that and up the ante. We need to get involved. There is no standing on sidelines. This is a war that we are in. This is do or die right now. When we see the referendum come along for The Voice, it must be smashed. Because it is dangerous, it is violent, and it intends to cost billions, millions of people their lives. And that includes Aboriginal people. They are being exploited and lied to. So we must defeat that at all costs. One of the big things that we use in these kind of rallies that we do here, whether it be protests, convoys, interviews, whatever, is social media. Enormous consumers of social media. That's how we get our messages out. And we know that the mainstream media are not going to cover what we're doing. They're not going to tell the truth. They're not going to report on this, because they are a part of the entire problem. Our mainstream media has fairly well been bought up by the people in the WEF, the enemies of our country. So they are in the business of attacking us, shutting us down. So we're looking at one of the things coming up very, very soon is a vote in the federal parliament on the misinformation and disinformation laws. So that, as an absolute priority, must fail. And we need to get involved as much as possible, and we need to push our politicians as hard as we can to defeat that bill. Because if that becomes law, everything that we're doing here, you will never hear of it again. This is one of their primary weapons in the attack on us. So that has to be absolutely taken down. We want the VFF to actually fight for our farmers. We want them to tell the truth. We want them to meet with Billboard Battalion. They know what's going on because they don't want to talk to me. They never ever did. They tell you they did, but they don't. They tell you they want to fight for the farmers. They are liars. We want the VFF to publicly admit that the global plan to destroy our farmers and our food supply exists. We want the VFF to stop being puppets of government and the World Economic Forum. We want our VFF to denounce multinational corporate ownership of agricultural land and our water. We want to fight to get the speculators and investors out of the water space. We currently have people from overseas own parts of our water. When the water used to be attached to the land, when you bought a farm, it had X amount of water came with it. And the government did what they call unbundling. And the VFF supported this. They unbundled the water from the land, and then that made it open for people overseas to buy our water and compete against our farmers, to hold our farmers to ransom. And this is one of the major problems that we have, and that needs to be attacked and repealed. We need them to cut their infatuation with trying to please the dangerous and toxic political class. We need them to cut those ties and stop trying to be their slaves, their little puppets, because that is our problem. That's where we've got our dramas. We need them to stop making excuses as to why they can't do anything. As I said before, they continually tell us, well, if we get stuck into the politicians, well, they're going to shut the door and they won't talk to us at all. And I used to say to them at the time, well, that's the time where you smash the door down.
Stop beating them.
You don't take that, because every time you do, they kill more of you. And that's the issue and that's the problem. So that's what we need to do to fight that. We need to fight for our members on a grassroots scale, upwards. We don't need them to be doing top down. They have their, what they call behind closed doors meetings. That's where they work out all their scams. That's where they work out how to destroy us. They don't have those meetings on the floor where people can see. There's no transparency. It's total corruption. And I've seen, and this is publicly available in the media, anybody can see what I'm about to say. And I was a member of the VFF Water Council and was privy to certain information. But what I'm going to say is publicly available and anybody can see it. We've got some members in these executive positions who have supported policies that have absolutely obliterated many of the farmer members, but the people who have supported these policies have made a fortune. They have made a killing. And this is a big part of the entire problem. People who are in charge of the advocacy get to make an absolute fortune out of screwing over the other members. That is unacceptable. That is not on. So we need to get these people to stop selling out not only our farmers but the Australian people. This is the deal. If you've got no food, you die. And that is what's on the line. And we need these people here to light the fire and have a red hot go. And finally, I'll just say, if they're not going to do that, if they're going to continue the corruption, if they're going to continue selling our farmers out, then they should resign. They should be sacked from the board. They should stop lying to the people and clear the way for someone who has the guts and the integrity and the decency to actually fight for our farmers like they are supposed to do.
So my story is in 2021 when the pandemic was in full force. New South Wales police officers, New South Wales police officers trespassed onto my rural property in northern New South Wales, and they were there for several minutes. This is unacceptable. And so this is the power that we have. So I took them on and I took them to the Supreme Court. I did not use lawyers. I used the Free Courts Act of 1400 because justice should not be sold to the people. And that is exactly the situation that we have right now. So I won that case. And that is a precedent that all of you now can use. Put your no trespass signs up. Nobody can come onto your property, whether it be the police, whether it be the King or the Queen, whether it be council, any corporate private agents and entities do not have free right to come onto your property. It's essential that you all start putting these measures into place now and that you know who you are and what your rights are. So that's all from me. Thank you.
It's a spiritual battle, so we need to realise that if we listen to our conscience, the light that's within us, we will be empowered, we'll get through and we'll be strong and all things will turn out for our good because we love God, we love the truth and we're doing what's right. The enemy out there, they listen to the voices out there, okay? They're of the world, we're not of the world, we're different to them. Okay, so we're not going to convince people that are of the world, that love all the things of the world. We're not going to convince them. We've got to find people of conscience and we need to unite with those people. That's what the word church really means. It means to be assembled with people, believers, those who believe in what's conscionable, what's true, what's correct. We're all born with it, but not all of us listen to that voice within us, and not all of us keep that voice within us. We're obviously those people who are of that ilk. So keep following your conscience and have courage. Fill your mind with courage, confidence, faith and power. And the people out there with all the fancy jobs and fancy cars and the status and standing and the ones that get the good airtime on all the mainstream media channels, they can be filled with all the fear and doubt and the hopelessness that truly is going to be their end result. So just keep being righteous, guys. Keep fighting for the truth. And if we don't give up, they don't win. Anyway, guys, God bless and thank you, Wade, for all the good work you're doing.